Morning. Joining us right now, we have Dr. Brad Gable with OhioHealth. Hi.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
You are an ER physician, so you see a lot come through your doors. Having said all this, obviously this is the time of season when people are lighting off fireworks and they can injure themselves.
Yeah.
What are some of the top injuries that you see coming into ERs this time of year?
Yeah, probably the most common is going to be, burns of different shape and sizes. We worry about, the mundane to, the really extreme, but the most common injury, whether it's from campfires, people cooking out, or the sparklers, burns are by far the most common thing that we see walking through the door.
And when it comes to if you are in one of these events, because the fire marshal's office, which you'll hear from Friday, has repeatedly said, leave them to the professionals. We know you love them, but let the people who really know how to handle them. In the event that you do end up with some sort of firework injury, the steps that you need to take before EMS gets there or you hop in the car to head to your door. What do folks need to do in order to take those first aid steps?
Yeah. So first thing is make sure people are safe. I mean, some of these firework displays are big cases, things like that. And once you light a fuse, there's others that are going to go off. So one, get everybody back and safe so that you don't have more victims. The second thing is get EMS involved early. The sooner that they get a call, the sooner we can stop life-threatening injuries. And then the third thing is if you can render aid, do it. So if they are minor burns, things like that, the sooner you can get cool running water on them and just leave it there, the better. So our most recent studies show that running it under cool water for about 20 minutes is your best way to stop the burning, save as much skin, tissue, things like that as possible. So even when I injure myself at home, that's the first thing I'm doing. Dinner can wait a little bit. And then also if you've got life-threatening injuries, so we worry about those explosive injuries, things like that, where you've got exposed bone or potentially a lot of bleeding, tourniquets save lives. So put a tourniquet on, stop the bleeding. We can always reassess it later. So the sooner that you can get the bleeding stopped, the better.
Okay,
Right.
and I always wonder too, if you were to lose a limb or a finger, I'm thinking about, I've heard of people putting the fingers on ice and bringing it back in. What do you guys recommend when it comes to something like that with your fingers or your hands?
Yeah, it gets tricky. So the explosive injuries are a little bit different just because the amount of damage they do. So the chances of salvage are a little bit less, but it's not none. So the best case scenario, our first responders are great. They take some gauze and they get it with soaked in saline. They'll put the limb in a bag so it's not directly against something cold, and then they'll put it on ice. That's the ideal scenario, and then our hand surgeons, vascular surgeons, orthopedic doctors can decide what are our options from there. It's better to have the option than to not, but not all injuries can be salvaged.
Right. And then when we talk about the burn aspects of that, is a lot of people will go, well, I've burned myself on the stove, or I stuck my finger on the cigarette lighter in the car as a kid. It's fine. But when we talk about burns of this severity, it's not a fast healing process, and it's often very difficult.
Yeah. So that's when we start, talking with our burn surgeons and some of our colleagues that do this for a living, right? So making sure that we are treating them properly. It can get very difficult to manage these patients very quickly. One, they're incredibly painful, so we got to make sure that their pain is well managed. Second is, depending on how much is burned, things like that, then your body can lose the ability to control its temperature. So the initial injury, they may be hot, and then they can get hypothermic afterwards. And so we have to be really careful with these patients and make sure that they're getting the right care. So if you're at all concerned, we'd rather see you figure out what our options are and figure out, is this something we need to refer? Is this something that we can manage with you at home? And then that way we can make sure that you get the best care possible.
How many patients do you guys see on average this time of year with firework-related injuries?
Yeah, I mean, we're always going to see some. It changes year to year depending on weather and how much people are out and things like that. This year it's going to be hot, it's going to be humid, people are going to be outside. The 4th falls on a weekend, right? Everything kind of lines up for this to be a fairly busy year. And so we're anticipating seeing a fair amount of injuries. Hopefully we can keep them to a minimum. Hopefully we can keep them minor, but we're prepared for the worst case scenario.
So kind of to wrap things up, going into the holiday weekend, what's your message to folks?
Be safe, right? So leave it to the professionals would be ideal. If you're going to set them off, only adults, keep people back. If you are going to set them off, please don't drink alcohol, right? It's like driving or boating or anything else. Do it in a safe way. And then if you're going to be setting off, make sure you've got your emergency plans in place. Who's calling, keeping water available, things like that, so that you can keep everyone there safe.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Good luck
thanks
this
for having me.
weekend if you're working. Oh, no, you're going out of town. Never mind. Okay.